is a brief overview of Chapter 5. In Chapter 5, you will study how sexuality is socially constructed by society. Of course, every society defines it differently because of the perceptions that people have based upon perhaps religion, politics, or even just their own personal experiences. This is a fascinating chapter because there are laws currently in the United States that have been passed by some states that affect transgender individuals. We know that in 2015, the United States Supreme Court did uphold the constitutionality of same-sex marriage. However, in the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that abolished Roe versus Wade, that was the Dobbs case, Justice Clarence Thomas specifically said in his opinion that the U.S. Supreme Court should revisit certain of their prior holdings regarding same-sex marriage, as well as some other privacy rights that are not part of this chapter, so I won't talk about them. But he specifically mentioned same-sex marriage. He is in fact encouraging the other justices to perhaps overturn the Obergefell versus Hodges case, which upheld the constitutionality of same-sex marriage. And so what you will learn in this chapter is that how we think of sexuality, how we think of sex itself, is very controversial in many states. And I consider myself fortunate to live in a state that does not have such controversial laws. But I want you to consider what it might be like for people who do live in those types of states. So what you'll also learn is the fact that there are largely two kinds of views about sexuality and sex: the sex positive view and the sex negative view. That means that in the sex negative view, people have learned to view sex and sexuality as something negative, something that perhaps should only be done rarely, or something that only should occur between certain types of people, and that only certain types of sexual identities are correct. In the sex positive view, the idea is that sex is something that is normal, it's healthy, there isn't anything wrong with it. Sure, we may set some parameters about where people can express their sexuality and their sexual orientation. For example, we don't want somebody in church just right there having sex in the middle of a religious ceremony. But we recognize that sex is not something that's bad or evil or wrong. So I hope you enjoy this chapter and understanding how, as much as our ideas about sexuality and sex have changed, in many ways, at least in some states, they're reverting back to what they were 40 or 50 years ago.